Hey, good morning. This is Genesis with Marc and Ian. Today, Ian is on assignment and actually having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I have with me a superstar guest, Marc Littell, who pitched for both the Kansas City Royals and the St. Louis Cardinals in the 70s and early 80s, and he was a Missouri boy who got a chance to play his whole career in Missouri, and I think that that's got to be fantastic. Disclaimer, Mike's family's from St. Louis, so I just happen to think St. Louis baseball is really cool, even though I'm not a Cardinals fan. But take it away, Marc. Welcome to the show.
Mark, I'm really glad to be on the show with you, first of all, but I'm out here in Arizona, and I'm enjoying the decent weather. It's almost spring training. It's just right around the corner. In 3 weeks from now, it's pitchers and catchers. And, I am a Missouri boy. I grew up in the Boot Heel of Missouri. It's not too awfully far from Memphis. And I grew up on a cotton and soybean farm, and my brother caught me. He was a year younger, and he actually got drafted twice. He played at Mississippi State. But I signed out of high school, and George Brett, I signed the same year, 1971. We both played in Billings the first year. And we had a whole lot of California boys. And they didn't really know how to take me at first because I don't think they'd ever seen a real, a real country redneck come in there. So they said, "Who is this guy?" And so it worked out though. It worked out for me especially because there was only 3 guys on that team that made it to the big leagues, and it was all the high school guys. We had an incredible team. You had guys from USC, UCLA, Pepperdine, a lot of good ball players. And then it's amazing when you rose to the surface that the 3 high school guys would end up making it. The third one would be Joe Zeb, and he was a 5th round pick out of Chicago. But, I was drafted by the Royals and then went through the ranks pretty quick. I got into the big leagues at age 20. That was by accident, in a sense, because I didn't even go to big league camp. And all of a sudden, I'm 9-1 in AAA, and they had to pull me up. Otherwise, somebody would have claimed me by a June deadline. It was June 15th deadline, so I got called up on the 14th.
Well, as a 20-year-old, you were pitching in Omaha in AAA for KC. And exactly. You had yourself one heck of a year, 16-6, 2.92 ERA, and all the other good stuff. And you logged a lot of innings. So I think you kind of earned yourself a way up to the big leagues at that point. A little young, but you certainly did prove it.
Yeah, what happened was I got called up. I was 9-1 at the time in June, and they called me up for the 30 days, and they really didn't know what they had. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what they had. I was a 12th round pick. For instance, Brett was a 2nd round pick, and George Brett, Buck Martinez, and I were rooming together in Omaha. And the 9-1 as a pitcher, and the fact that I didn't go to big league camp caused a little bit of a glitch in the baseball system. And I've got some really Forrest Gump statistics along the way, but I went back down. I opened in Baltimore. To get to the story is, when I opened in Baltimore and did well, I was a starter at the time. I went like 6 1/3 innings and gave up 1 run. And then I went back into Kansas City and opened up against the Oakland A's, who would end up winning 3 out of 5 World Series in that five-year frame. And I actually found out baseball, what it was really like. So I had a little bit more maturing to do. I wasn't really ready to win. I finished at 16-6 in Omaha, then came back up for the September. We had a call up at September, and then I actually went to winter ball, so I packed on a lot of innings, and that led to my first arm surgery. But that's actually got me into the big leagues too, as far as what I could really do. So it cleaned out some stuff, and I threw the ball quite well at that point.
Now you were pretty much fast tracked for the majors, though, because you jumped from from A ball to AAA from between being the age of 19 and 20, And a lot of guys don't do that. A lot of times it seems like Double A is really where the prospects go to because that's where all the work goes, and then a little cup of coffee in Triple A, and then you get to the pros, to the majors. But they moved you right to Triple A, so they must have seen something. Did you feel that way? Did you have discussions with them?
Well, actually, it's a funny story because in spring training, I was always in shape, and about the second day in, Lou Gorman and John Sherrills, who was the assistant farm director at the time, they were kind of attached at the hip, and they said, hey, I was running by them, and they said, hey, Mark, Lou said, you feel pretty good. You're always in shape. And I said, yeah. He said, hey, you think you can throw 3 innings tomorrow for the Triple A? Because I was working out with Double A. And so all of a sudden I said, sure. So I went over and I threw 4 innings actually and gave up 1 hit, no runs, whatever. And I was doing a technique on visualization that I'd learned. And so I was actually focused because I'm ADD as all get out. And so
I'm with you, buddy. Me too.
Yeah, I slowed my brain down. And so they definitely said I was not going to go to AAA by the time I was finished. I had thrown 27 innings in spring training, which was unheard of, actually, even though our spring trainings were longer for the minor leagues back then. So I think they wanted me to see if I could pass or fail, and I opened up in Denver, and Cliff Johnson hit a home run off me. That's the only run I gave up. And that ball probably took a first-class cab ride downtown Denver. I'm sure it did. That was the longest ball hit off me ever, probably, because of the light air. He golfed it.
Now that sounds pretty good. By the way, my technical difficulties have ended. Hello, Mark. Nice. Welcome you to the show.
Yeah. Oh, it's just great to be here. Sure, for instance. That's great.
Yeah. Sorry for it. But how were the minor leagues back then? Was it harder to break into baseball than it is probably today, or do you think it was a lot easier?
I was 20 years old. Everybody else was 27 and up. And, they were just kind of staring at us. They didn't like us, because we were kind of, who are these guys? And they're not bad ball players, and why are they here? And they're actually doing, pretty good. So, it was slim pickings who he ran with, really. But my catchers did take care of me. They really did. I ended up knocking an umpire out on purpose by accident, in a sense. And it's in the book. It's called Blue Angel. It's a free chapter. And I wrote a book, which is hard to believe. Actually, I wrote 3 books. I didn't know when to stop. And the editors were just laughing their butts off. And they said, "Hey, Mark, you can stop." I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, you've written 3 books." And I said, "Really?" So I said, "Well, what's that mean?" "Well, 170,000 words is going to get you 3 books, and you've got a lot of material." So I said, "Okay." And but the one book, one chapter is called Blue Angel, and it's where Dennis Papke was getting into it with an umpire because I was basically pitching against the Cincinnati Reds, the Big Red Machine that would win it the next year. They had Foster, Griffey, Dreesen out in the outfield, and they had Knight was over at third, and Youngblood. They had a really good team, and I didn't have any problems going through them, because I finished 16 in the 6th that year. But Pap, he was my catcher, and he kept putting marks down in the dirt, and I didn't know what he was doing. Actually, he was telling the umpire, he says, "Yeah, George, you missed another one." So that was the umpire, George. And so George says, hey, Pap, you get to 5, your ass is grass, you're out of here, And he says, "Oh, yeah, you can count now, huh?" So that's what he said to the umpire. So anyway,
how to win friends and influence your enemies.
Oh, yeah. So we got 2 outs, and Pappy comes out the mound. He's really mean, so he's funny. But he said, "Hey, I want you to hit my mask." He says, "George is kind of screwing you." So what do you mean his mask? He said, "Just hit me in the mask." He said, "And I want you to give me your best fastball and let it fly." I said, "Well, you got Roe Skidmore up there." What a great name. He's 6'6", blonde hair, blue eyes. And he said, "Roe never swings at the first pitch anyway. I know him." So he bumps into him, and I found out later that he was stretching his bat over the back of his head, and he's a really big guy. He said, hey, Ro, let the first one go. And he said, hey, no problem. So anyway, he instead of giving me a fastball sign, he gives the back of his hands like he's backing up a truck, you know, with his back of his hand, just, okay, bring it on, you know, put the glove in his free hand. Okay, let's go, bring it on. No sign, hit me in the mask. And so I just let it go, and I got around the mask, and what we thought would happen was Pappy would get kicked out because it just came in the mask. He'd say, hey, you're out of here, you're gone. Well, what it did was it hit him right underneath the mask, and he stumbled back a couple of feet, and all of a sudden he's knocked out, and he looks like Pappy said, look. And by the time I got up there, Pappy said, look, he's a snow angel. And I said, no, he's not. He's a blue angel. And so the other two umpires hadn't made it up yet. They didn't know what the hell was going on. So Pappy didn't get kicked. He didn't get kicked out. So, but it's a better story than that because it keeps on going. Because I had to call the damn guy. He was in the hospital the next day. So and we were leaving on a flight to go to I think it was Iowa at the time. So I had to apologize because my manager said he loved me, but he said, you're going to call up George. And he called me at like 5:15 in the morning. And, Brett, George was my roommate, Brett. And he said, who was that? And I said, that's Harry. He said, what did he call for? He said, he wants me to apologize to George. He said, are you shitting me? Which is a common baseball term in my book. And actually, I say it quite a bit. So, but that is a common baseball term. So.
It's a common softball term, too. We use it a lot as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but,
congratulations, folks, buy the book, and you'll get the full story.
Yeah. It's name the book's on the eighth day God made baseball. And you can just go to my names, www.marclittell.com, or you can go on the eighth day God made baseball. But I've been fortunate. I've got some really good reviews, and I think the women actually like it because they say it's a life learning lesson. I said, yeah, whatever. But, it's fun stuff. It really is. And I keep it light.
Let me ask you, Marc. You grew up in Cape Girardeau in Missouri. How did you feel?
I was born in Cape. I grew up 70 miles south there. I'm a redneck. Those guys aren't rednecks up there. They're northern Yankees.
but think of it this way. You played for both Kansas City and St. Louis, both Missouri teams. It's like me and Marc. We grew up in Brooklyn and both playing for the Yankees and Mets, How did that feel?
Oh, it felt great. I actually didn't know who the Royals were because I'd always followed the Cardinals. And that's where we went to our games was, to see guys like, Gibson and Mutual and Lou Brock. I was there the very first day that Lou Brock got traded. He actually opened up on the road in Colt 45 from the Chicago trade. And then I had a broken foot. That's in the book too. But the thing about it is I had a broken foot and I rode up on the elevator and Lou Brock jumps on. My dad knew who he was. And he said, halfway up the elevator, because we were in nosebleed section. And so my dad said, you're Lou Brock, aren't you? And he said, yes, sir. And he says, well, want to wish you the very best with your career here. We're so glad to have you. And he says, well, thank you. And so he gets off because their locker was on the second floor, just like, Cubs Park. And, because that's was the old Sportsman's Ballpark before the first Busch Stadium was built where I played, actually. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting. And, I was there the very first week, and then 14 years later, I'm playing with Lou Brock, and I'm traded over to the Cardinals, and, I kind of mentioned Lou a little bit, but I just kind of made light of it. He kind of snickered because it's 14 years later. And the night that we were playing the Cubs on his 3,000 hit night, he comes up, he's leading off. He gets 2,099 on his first at bat. Then in the fourth inning, he gets the 3,000th hit. So he stopped the game for 8 or 10 minutes, hoopla and all that. And I'm the closer, and I ended up throwing the 8th and the 9th, and the score was 2-2, and I ended up getting the win on that sucker. So, I mean, that's just, that's fate almost. It's just like, I have it in my chapter called Forrest Gump Statistics, actually. So, that, things like that happen.
What kind of teammate was Lou? And when you first came over, because you watched him play as a kid, did you feel a little in awe of the guy? I mean, at this point, you're a major leaguer. I mean, you're not a newbie to the game, but how did you feel when you got over there? I mean, was it's Lou Brock, or just like he's a teammate?
Well, I didn't really feel in awe of Lou. I respected him because he's such a great player, because I was in the game myself. But I watched him. I watched the good players, and Lou was always, he was quiet. There's quiet leaders, and then there's a little bit more, they're boisterous type leaders, and certain guys know certain things to say at certain times. But Lou was a quiet leader, and he did it with his bat. He did it with his speed. He did a lot of things. He got the clutches, and he shined, and he still did it. And he's got such an incredible story, I feel. I mean, I came from a very poverty-stricken area, but he came from an extremely poverty-stricken area down in Louisiana and just basically starved to death. It was amazing, some of the stuff about Lou, and it's just for him to go that far and to do what he did. I'm in a little bit of awe because I'm finding out more about him as a player as I reach out into this media thing I'm going through right now.
He really struggled a lot in the beginning when he was in Chicago. There were a lot of expectations. He was trying to be a power hitter and not use his greatest asset, which was his smarts and his speed. And then when he came over to St. Louis in '64, he changed the pennant race and forever made himself a hero in St. Louis.
Without a doubt. But, I think it takes one or two people to say certain things, because maybe certain people have certain expectations. And then if somebody says something the right way, then that makes you perform a little bit to your expectations, because it's just how it's said to a certain player, how they go forward. It's the communication factor. I think we're all developers as far as coaches. When we have like 26 coaches at the minor league level, and maybe we touch a certain guy a certain way or say a certain thing, and he picks up on it, and it causes kind of a breakthrough. And it's a very, very interesting game, the game of baseball, because it is by the inches right there. So I don't know, it's just the way you say certain things, the way you approach the whole game, the attitude.
Let me ask you,
I think that's true.
It is true. Let me ask you, Mark, you had the good fortune of playing for Whitey Herzog, both on the Royals and the Cardinals. Right. Was his managing style the same, or did you see him advance as the years got on?
No, he's the same guy. Whitey might have two meetings a year, maybe three, and those two meetings never lasted over 2 minutes. It's pretty funny. And because when Whitey said something, you listened. But usually it was just light, very light. There was no, we've got to do this, football type. That's not baseball. Baseball's fine-tuned, fine-touch, kinesthetic awareness stuff. It's light. It's not let's charge in there and go get them today, because that's not the way it works. Because you have to have the right mindset. If you want to throw, let me say this: if you want to throw a really good fastball, you have to relax more. You don't overpower it. I have to get so jellyfished out there, to do that. And most people would think, oh, he's really bearing down, which is not a very good term in baseball. You don't bear down. You actually relax. That's the one thing that I could do, and I enjoyed it. Whitey wrote my forward, and he said he used to call me Airhead, and
affectionately.
yeah. So Airhead, I thought he was calling me airhead because, I used to have a blast between the lines. I'm not kidding you either. I mean, I was very relaxed. And, everybody said, oh, how do you do this when you're closing out a ball game? And I said, well, what's so hard about it? I said, it's kind of like me and the hitter, and let's get it on, let's get it over with right now. So, but why he called me airhead? And he said, in the book, and I didn't know he thought this way, but he said Littell was the coolest pitcher I ever had between the lines. He was very calm. And I thought that was really cool that he said that. I mean, I might not have lasted long, but I got 100 innings in, which is unheard of in a sense because they don't do that anymore, and that's probably why my career was shortened. I'm sure it was. I got 100 innings. I think
it was routine back in those days.
Sorry?
The closer could go 2 or 3 innings as opposed to today. They're going to get 3 outs, and that's it. Maybe a 4th out if, it's a playoff game and you bring them in early. But
no, they get 1 pitch nowadays. And the funny thing is we had to get three innings to get a save. Back then, we had to get 3 innings to get a save. I mean, 2 innings was like a no big deal day. And for me to get in 100-something innings and was like, that's a big deal because if you do that, I did it 3 different years and I didn't know any better. I'm just, a strong kid and strong guy. But your arm does take a beating. But you can throw 1 pitch nowadays and get out of it. You can throw 2/3 of an inning and get out of it. Because if you look at the statistics, you've got guys with 65 appearances and 65 innings or 60 innings. So that's an interesting area right there. But we would get up because they really didn't know how to use the closer back then. The guy that slams the door. Gossage and Forrester and myself and a few others, Fingers. They didn't know how to use us at all. The best managers know how to manage their pitching staffs, and Whitey knew how to do that, and Earl Weaver, he did a great job. The guy with Oakland, Dick.
I think LaRussa was always very good with it. He had Dave Duncan as a great pitching coach.
Yes, yeah, and, because the guy who understands the pitching, that's the guy that's going to win. And like Bochy, I was Bochy's pitching coach because I coached 20 years professionally. I was his pitching coach in high A ball. Well, Piazza and what's his name? The pitcher, Martinez. Yeah, Pedro. Martinez was in that league and so he was in that league at the time, and we ended up winning the whole league. And you still had Piazza and those guys to go through. But, Boch knew how to handle pitching. Well, we had 5 guys on our team that went to the big leagues out of that A-ball group right there. And it was high A. It's in California. But, Boch still does the same thing, knows how to handle pitching. And, you look at managers. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, back in your day, obviously, they didn't know how to handle pitchers, and I think it's pretty obvious by just the way things panned out. Do you think it's gone to the opposite extreme today where they over-coddle them, probably because there's a lot of money involved in it, as opposed to back in your day where they just said, hey, country, here's the ball, go out there and throw 3 innings because we got to get out of the game. And by the way, you're going to have to throw 2 tomorrow. They've changed it a lot.
Well, you look at this millennial thing right now. I've got an 18 and a 16U team. I have 2 college teams out here that I have in Arizona. And, the millennials, the strongest part of the millennial is their thumbs. So, I mean, they're on Xbox and whatever else. So,
I know.
But, if they don't want to come out and play, they won't come out and play. So there's no real blue-collar type player then. If you do find a blue-collar player, you're not going to find him so much maybe out on the West Coast. You're going to find him in Texas or some redneck joint, Mm-hmm. And those are the guys that stand out. And, they go ahead. You can look at the draft, the way it is. You look at the Midwest. You look at even New York's got some. But but who goes to the big leagues? What states are they from?
Florida, California.
Florida, California a little bit. California, they have a burnout factor out there. We have a burnout factor out here, But, you look at that little island over there, Dominican Republic. You've got over 30% of the big leaguers are from Latin American countries. Once they start getting technology over there, then you'll probably see a downfall over there. Let's put it that way. Once they get the technology. But, the kids are smart today, and you've got kids that are getting educations, and I don't know if they want to put the work in that, it's required and say, hey, I haven't got a chance, and they give up on themselves early, and they just say, hey, I'm gonna go, get a position somewhere in society and go that route and go the other route. But it takes a horse to sit out there and do that and not make a lot of money sometimes at the minor league level. And so I think the money comes into play right now. I don't know if there's as much passion in the game anymore as there used to be, because you don't see those kids coming out on those fields. But of course, the bad thing is all the fields are locked nowadays. For insurance reasons. A kid can't play sandlot ball hardly. Everything's locked up. So, kind of interesting. And,
well, I think it goes back to they don't even hang out with each other anymore. They have to have play dates that are all arranged and sponsored by adults. I think what's the joke? Because I work at a local Little League, and the joke we have is how many adults it take to ruin the fun for the kids. And unfortunately, I see that happen an awful lot. And you're absolutely right. We confiscate phones. We tell them, you got to leave your phone in a box, or we're going to take your phone because we can't have them out while the game's going on. And so that is a big challenge. They're not historians. They don't watch it on TV. They don't enjoy going to the game as much. So we see this all the time. And plus, there's other sports to compete with. There's no question about it. It's a different world in that respect. But these folks who come from the Caribbean and South and Central America, they come here and they work hard, and and this is their ticket.
They're poverty stricken there. I've coached and played there, and I've coached in Panama, Australia for 4 years. I've coached, and I'm not even counting that, but Panama, Dominican, Puerto Rico I played too, and Dominican in Panama will give you a wake-up call, go out there and look at some of the poverty. They have wealth, but they also have an extreme amount of poverty out there. And those kids want to get off that island, and they want to play baseball. And if you look at the catchers behind the plate, you're not going to get a gringo too much to catch behind the plate. You got mostly Latinos behind the plate nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got your rare, rare guys that are back there, but those Latinos, they come through, they're tough. And it's sad, and people will probably hear this and they'll hear me say this, but that's the truth. It's almost, we used to draft guys out of college and some pretty good catchers, and they don't make it through Double-A. They can't handle it, and it's pretty sad. So we've also got 320 million people versus 160 million people when I went through the system. So we're double population, but we're also a lot more obviously technology's all over the place. So you can get anything anytime and know anything about certain things and do the statistics. The other thing is also, if I grew up on a farm, which is my father, who was a Korean War veteran, and he got shot all to hell. He said, hey, I want to go put the plow points on that rig over there, and you wouldn't have a 20-minute workout like you would in a strength and fitness place. You would do it if it took 3.5 hours to finish it. So I'm torquing wrenches and things and you're getting actually strong. And I grew up on a soybean farm, so I'm throwing 60-pound sacks all day long. And so, there's that was the way it was back then. Dad told you to do something, and the kids don't get that nowadays. They don't have that. They want to go to the gym and work out and BS around for 2 hours, and when you could get it done in 20 or 25 minutes, and your workout. So, but A lot to it.
It's just the changing world, so to speak. I wanted to kind of pivot the conversation. I wanted to ask you about teammates that you played with. And obviously I'm sure people ask you about George all the time because obviously he is a legend in Kansas City and, you know, one of the greatest players to play of all time. But before I talk about him, I wanted to ask you about playing with Keith Hernandez because he was an interesting sort of guy. And he's kind of a legend here in New York. So people definitely are interested in hearing stuff about Keith.
Well, Keith should be a legend. He could hit. He could hit in the clutch.
Great glove.
He was the best glove I've had behind me ever. He was an outstanding fielder, and he had a good arm. He could turn the double play. He could, you know, do the 3-6-1 back there, and he was spot on, you know, as far as hitting the glove with either Templeton or Ozzie, who I was fortunate to have actually. And but you know, you're making that long throw, and most first basemen, they're okay, but Keith was above the norm right there as far as making that throw, because that's one thing you got to look at. Sometimes they can field, but you know, can they throw? Well, Keith could throw, field, hit in the clutch, hit with power at times. More of a doubles guy, you know, had some wheels. Occasional stolen base would get a read when needed. You know, all out gamer. Just you know, he knew the game. He knew the game of baseball. He liked to talk the game of baseball. Obviously, he's still talking the game of baseball. So, I mean, that's it. He did a super job. You know,
for me, it's like watching him charge the bunt at first base. He was fearless. He would come so close to the batter. If that batter turned around and actually swung the bat and the ball came to Keith, I don't know how he'd get out of the way of it, but he always made those plays. And you're right about his arm. He could pick that ball up on the bunt and hit the shortstop with that same motion and then turn a double play on a bunt play. He was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, you know, even sometimes with the pitcher bunting, you know, coming up in a runner on first, second, they don't sometimes let the pitcher hit instead of bunt because you know, they were going to make the out at third, and if you had the slower runner on first and you had the faster runner on third, and Keith was playing in so far, he would still get the out at third because they just wouldn't do it. You know, they just say, hey, here, let the pitcher hit and see if he can, you know, get a run in or a walk or whatever, you know. But if you're going to bunt it over toward Keith, you know, you're going to make it out. He's going to get you at third. So you get your lead runner, your faster runner, and then you got a slow runner on second. So it changes the whole scope of the game.
Now, was he a talker all during, like, the game? Like, was he, like, constantly, like, while he's in the field, say things, bark out instructions? Because when he got to the Mets, he was constantly chit-chatting and getting the guys to do things that he wanted to do. But he was the captain of the team when he was here. But early on, like in St. Louis, when he was younger, was he that type of player? Or did you see him grow into that?
We wouldn't chit-chat so much about baseball.
Gotcha.
That's so funny. You know, people say, what are you talking about out there? We're talking about the girl behind the plate or something. So, I mean, don't tell me this. Because even when you come out to the mound, we're not talking that. We're talking other stuff. I mean, you know, he would probably say, Chili, babe, let's go get an out. You know, hey, country, will you get this guy out for me or something like that? Or, you know, and I say, yeah, let me strike. When I'm throwing good, I say, hey, you want me to strike him out? And he said, yeah, strike the guy out, will you? Okay. So everybody says, he's telling you what to do. No. That's not the way it works. You know, that's, no.
Just breaking the tension and getting you refocused in other ways.
I didn't have any tension. I was telling him about the same stuff he was telling me and laughing at him. So
that's hysterical.
There was no. If you're a big league ball player and if you clam up, if you think people clam up, you're not going to be a big league ball player. That's what it is. We had fun out there. And the teams that don't have fun lose. It's real simple.
Do you think there were a lot of guys that you played in the minors with who had major league talent, but let's say played so tight that they just couldn't make it in the majors? Do you think that happened a lot?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, you saw it. Had real good arms, you know, and you know they overdid it with their brain a little bit. oh, I've got to, anytime you tell yourself, I've got to do this, you're setting yourself up to fail. Oh, I've got to throw a strike in. Well, you're not going to throw a strike in. So it's opposite what most people think. It's not, oh, I'm going to throw this by you. No, that's not the way it works, because hitters will hit that right back up the middle on you. It's a relax. You have to relax in baseball. You can't play it with any tension in your arms or body.
I always feel like pitching is not so much about speed, but it's about changing speeds and changing location and keeping the hitters from getting their timing is probably the most important thing to do.
Well, if you got movement and you change speeds, that's ideal. If you have the closer, he has one pitch that overrides anybody else's pitch. Like mine would happen to be my slider. But I threw 93 to 95 generally. And, Whitey said, and I got inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame Missouri Sports Hall of Fame about 3.5 months ago. And he was talking to me about Whitey did a segment in there where he said, Marc threw 96 to 98. I said, yeah, that was on my good days. But, my slider was really my pitch. And, a funny thing is, I'll tell you something. ESPN called me about 3.5 years ago. And I know when I get an intern because he says, Mr. Littell. And I say, okay, I'm going to play my part. I'll say, what do you want? And so, what do you want? And so he'll say, yeah. And he'll say, well, your record might fall. And I said, what record? And he says, well, you hold the all-time Cardinal strikeout record for relievers. I said, no shit. So anyway, I said, really? I said, who's supposed to break it? He said, this Rosenthal. I said, well, good for him. I said, records are meant to fall. Well, he missed it by 3, so I still hold that record today. And that's a funny, stupid record. And you got Gibson and Musial and all these other guys, then you see Littell.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Marc. You mentioned before, if you don't have fun, you're not going to win. If there's tension, you're not going to. Let me ask you this: the Oakland A's were the Kansas City A's, right? A decade before. They were fighting each other. And then Kansas City got the Royals, which you were on. And then they come up against the Yankees, who every day's a tension-filled day. And Whitey, you just mentioned, kept it loose.
Yeah.
So how did it feel in Kansas City? You beat the A's finally. You were able to get, to the top of the division. And now you're losing to a tension-filled Bronx Zoo bunch of players.
Yeah, but we had fun like everybody else. We had fights in the clubhouse. That was fun. We had fights on the plane. That was with the Cardinals that happened actually. That was pretty fun. Had to stop that. Or the pilot got on there and said, I don't know what the hell you guys are doing back there, but I'm gonna set this SOB down in Cleveland. You guys can bus it as far as I'm concerned to Chicago. So. Like we're at 30,000 feet, and all these oxygen masks popped down. So anyway, it's pretty funny. But no, we had fun. It's just it's a great sport. You have your serious side. You know what you got to do. You don't have to be told. It's over and over and over and over in spring training. It's over and over and over in instructional league, the minors. You're learning to. You do certain things you're meant to do. You have to do. So.
Ian brings up a good segue. Let's talk about 1976 and 1977, those 2 years when your Royals teams played up against those Bronx Zoo Yankee teams. They actually played 3 straight years in the playoffs, and those were some of the most action-packed, down-to-the-wire series. Give us some recollections, and I guess We'll talk about a key moment a little bit later, but let's talk about all your recollections for those 2 series that you participated in.
Well, 76, I had a really good year. I even got some MVP votes on that one, and I found that out like when I'm doing all this stuff. But the funny thing is I had a really good spring. They had an owner lockout, and they didn't know if I was going to be part of this team. And I was actually going to ask for a trade if I wasn't part of the team. But anyway, I was throwing well. I hit through 10 innings, and I went up to Whitey to ask. I said, "Hey, am I next to last day?" I said, "Am I going to be on this part of this team?" He said, "Well, sure you are." He said, "Hell yes, you are." And I said, "Okay, great." So we opened up in Baltimore. We lost the game or something, and the second game, and Whitey came over to me the beginning of the third game, before the game started. I was out in the outfield playing catch or something. He said, he called me Country then. He changed that airhead later. But he said, "Hey, Country, you know what a closer does?" And I said, "Yeah, he slams the door." He said, "That's what you're going to do for me." I said, "That's cool." So anyway, he said, "I want to stretch out." So I got in actually 4 innings that day, and I got a win. Jackson was over there then. I never had a problem with Reggie Jackson. Matter of fact, he said something about I was a nightmare. He said that about 3 months ago. He said, he's talking about facing Marc Littell. He said he was a nightmare. And, I got all my big hitters out, but, for the most part anyway. But, so I had a really good day, and then all of a sudden, I gave up like 2 hits and no runs and, came in and did my thing. So I started, doing the closer role, and in 76, we finally knocked off Oakland, obviously. And it was interesting, what I did, because my arm was really feeling good. I was obviously throwing the ball well. And then you go to the playoffs, and then you give up the 1 home run that really cost you. I only gave up 1 home run the whole year previous to that.
I was going to say, in that playoff series, you only gave up 1 run in the series. You were dominant before that. I
only gave up 1 home run, the whole year up to that even. So that was actually the second home run was the one in the playoffs. And that was the furthest thing from my mind. It went out about 2 feet, and, the wind caught it, and we had a 7-minute delay out there, and I motioned to Buck, and I said all I saw were my outfielders' numbers. And, they had their gloves on their hips and kind of just standing there looking at all the crap that was thrown down. And about 5 minutes into it, 4 minutes into it, I was throwing a little bit off and on. And I said to Buck, motioned him out there, and I said, "Let's just get the hell off the mound, He says, "No, they're getting it. So I said, "Yeah, okay, whatever." So anyway, and then, it was just a delay like that. And then so I wind up, throw the pitch to Chambliss, ball's up, and he hits it up in the air like he should have, because it was high, but it carried over the fence, and that was the way it was. And, people tore the Yankee Stadium apart at that time. Matter of fact, there was no rubber, there was no plate, there was no bases. Chambliss made it a little bit past second, and he tried to get back. His goal was to try to get back into the dugout. Nobody alive. When I threw the pitch, alive. When I turned around, I was looking at the ball, and then when I turned back around, I had put 1 foot on the grass off the bump, the mound, and there was already people on the mound going past me, and that's how fast that they got onto the field. And then when I walked down into the dugout, I was just kind of like, just didn't know what was going on. I saw Freddie over there. He had his head down. And then somebody grabs me, and I walked up the runway right there to the clubhouse, and it was lined with, New York's finest cops. They were there, both sides of me. They were on both sides, just lined up. And then I walked into the clubhouse. I went directly to the shower, and Amos Otis, Dave Nelson, Whitey came in, Galen Cisco. They were trying to help console me a little bit on this thing. And about 8 or 10 minutes later, I finally tried to, pull my head up and go over to my locker, and that's about it.
Well, I tell you, the two of us, both Ian and I, probably have different perspectives on that day in that game. I remember it like it was yesterday, because I was watching it with my mom on TV, and when it happened, I was crushed. I was devastated. And I grew up in a family where Yankees was a dirty word. So we were definitely rooting for the Royals. We were rooting against the Yankees, and when it happened, it just like I just sat there and I was like numb. And I'm sure Ian has the reverse feeling where after 12 years of the Yankees not winning a pennant, you were probably jumping up and down, my friend.
Yeah, I think it was 14 years, wasn't it, or was it 12?
It was 12 years since they made the World Series and lost to the Cardinals. It was 14 since they won the World Series against San Francisco.
Giants.
Okay, got it. And then,
but
it's I was a Yankee. Hey, you got Yankee fan, you got Cardinal fan, you got Royal fan. That's baseball. That's the way it's supposed to be. They pay for their ticket and they're supposed to have fun. And that's the way I look at it.
You know what was amazing, Mark? When the fans, you weren't even on the grass, and there was footsteps all around you, and no one even touched you.
I know. Nobody touched me, which I was, people ask me that 100 times, and they say, "Would anybody touch you?" And I said, "No, nobody touched me." It
was Chandler they wanted to get a piece of.
Yeah, I think so. Somebody wanted that helmet, and Chris has a part in my book. He has comment. I have a section called "The Big Bang Theory, Not a Theory." That's the chapter, and Chris wrote in there for me, and then Whitey wrote the foreword, and Benny Matthews, who's the announcer for the Royals, he wrote a bullet, and Dave Nelson, who played a long time and also announced, he wrote a bullet, and so did Jim Wolford. So I've got some really good credibility, but it's like everybody said, it's just like they said, it's like sitting next to Marc Littell telling a story and, good storyteller. And I didn't know I could write because I'm ADD. I did this and I started 2.5 years ago, and I didn't know I could write because I was a little bit afraid. And then all of a sudden I started writing, putting these words together, and all of a sudden I passed it by people, and they said, "Wow, this is really good stuff." I said, "You think so, huh?" And they said, "No, I know so." I said, "You're just kind of like Mark Twain." I said, "Well, you're a crazy son of a bitch out in Missouri, too." So it's just like you're telling a story, and it's just, with your, country twang, and it's, So anyway,
Mark, have you done a lot of book tours?
This book's only been out eight weeks, and I'm just getting my first. On February 17th, I'll do my first out here in Phoenix. I'll do my first. Phoenix is so separated from everything. I'm using a lot of social media, and I use a lot of Facebook. I use some other things, and talking to you guys. That's nice. It helps spread the word too. But it's just you guys. It helps me quite a bit because I do have a good read. I have a very, very interesting, different read, and everybody says this is such a different read. And I said, yeah, and it's always in a good way because Amazon, you can go up and see the reviews, and I kind of like looking at those reviews because they're all real positive about it, real good. So.
Are you in my pages? That the Dugout, a couple of other ones that are there that you can possibly put your book up.
I probably am not, so, but it's, I'm always searching to put this up. And I've had some reviews from New York sports writers, and they've given me some really good reviews as well, which was nice.
They're a tough crowd too, so that's positive.
They are a tough crowd. It was pretty cool. They said this is a definitely good read. I said, and some people said you definitely got a distinct style. I said it's different. And I said, yeah, but the stories are fun, and it talks about my brother and I, and getting in trouble quite a bit. And my father was Korea War and a farmer, and my mother was a registered nurse, and so if we needed sewn up, she did it right out there when we'd holler, and my brother caught me, and he was a year younger. He played Mississippi State, and he got drafted twice. And Eric was funny because I said, hey, I called him up. I said, I was in the big leagues, and I said, Eric, you want to sign? I said, Eric got drafted, and he said, yeah. I said, Eric's funny. And I said, you going to sign? And he paused, and he said, let me tell you something. That's a bunch of shit what you do. So I said, okay. So he didn't want to play. He made the right choice, though. He knew he was double A tops. He didn't want to go through that mess. So
that's a really smart guy who knew just where he'd top out and made sure he was successful in something he wanted to do.
Yeah, he'd been around me and he'd been spring training before. He'd been to instructional, and he said, "No, I ain't gonna do that."
There you go. So besides being obviously an awesome closer and a great baseball player, now a renowned author, you're also the inventor of the Nutty Buddy, and I want you to tell us everyone about that because I call it a lifesaver, but your videos on it are hysterical, irreverent, and quite honestly, that's what got me to buy it in the first place.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the one on YouTube where I ride the bull, but the bull killed me. He cracked my pubic bone, actually.
Oh, no, that one I didn't see. I saw the one with the 100-mile, where the 90-mile-an-hour pitching gun hit you.
Yeah. And the bull's name was Playboy, and Playboy kind of did a number on me. And it was a pretty big bull. And, I just rode this bull 3 years ago. I'm 64. I just turned 64 this week. But the funny thing is I'm sitting there, and I said, well, if the guy can take a 357 right to the chest, I can take a 90-mile-an-hour hot rod right into the nads. So I did it, and, I had a guy that filmed it. He was from HBO. He was actually filming me, and doing some stuff because he kind of picked me out of the crowd, and Milwaukee wouldn't release it. They wanted to release it, do it like an HBO type series, because it was getting me on the bench, me being me. And so, and they said, no way, this is going to be released. So, it was during, coaching, when I was coaching, in rookie ball, and that time was rookie ball. I've done everything, but except big league, but, the Nutty Buddy, I had a 90-mile-an-hour shot. It went on Lopez's show. Fox Sports Science, they did a super job. Fox and Friends Morning Show in Times Square, they did a great job. The first one on in Times Square actually glanced, and I don't like it when it's not sighted in right because it hit the cup and hit the side of me, and I'm on blood thinners anyway, and I was black and blue for 3 weeks at least. Oof. And it hit me. And I was going, yeah, and I felt like saying, that really freaking hurt, And so, and then, Gretchen comes on there and everybody's laughing, and so Gretchen's on there and she says, we're going to go to break here and we're going to have more fun stuff when we come back. I actually thought I was through. And she said to me, hey, Marc, she says, I want to drop one in on you. I said, oh, gosh, okay. So I had to realign this thing up in about, 20 seconds to make sure it was going to hit me right. I used a laser, by the way. So I shot it right down the end of the tube. So you're standing 5 foot away from a pitching machine, cranked up on you.
Better than me, brother.
Yeah, I have a new product out called Flex, and it's pretty cool. And, you flex, it flexes, and I'll still take a 90-mile-an-hour shot with that. All the other ones break. I don't care what you say. We get them back. People send them to us. They sit there and they say, this one doesn't work, this one doesn't work. Everybody says, this is, and, my cup is on the high end. It's $19.95, but the thing about it is it works. And so, and you got 5 sizes, and I got Hammer, Boss, Hog, Trophy, Mongo. That's how they sell. I mean, there are no smalls. I mean, you're not going to walk up to the good-looking chick behind the counter and with a small, So, I mean, she's going to be, oh, you guy wears a small. Are you kidding me?
Are you sure you needed it all, sir?
Yeah, right. The guy might just even fold right there in front of her. What the heck?
Well, I bought mine with the spandex short that came together, and it was definitely a lifesaver. Like I told you before we started the call, when I was doing knuckleball, it didn't knuckle, and it could have. I pitched from 46 feet, and I probably finished after I released at about 38, 35 feet, and that sucker came back at me like a laser beam. And
you're right.
I say thank you for saving my life, Mr. Littell.
Well, you took a shot to the crotch.
I took yeah.
Oh, Jimmy.
As we call it, ringing the bell.
Yeah, ringing the bell.
Mark, we're going to have to close down the show because we're only allowed X amount of time. But let me ask you, would you come back to the show again, do some more talking about your book? If you hold the line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the names of my, I don't know if we're connected as friends on Facebook, but I'll put you in my groups and I want you to advertise your books as well.
I appreciate that so much. I just want to get a good read out there. It's a fun read. So.
No, it's a fun read.
Wait.
I'm glad I was able to get into the show. All those technical difficulties went on, but this is great. This is how I end the show, folks. Mark, hold the line, folks.
Yeah.
I had a blast. Mark, I hope you had a great time with Mark and me. You know, we're a little bit eccentric, but
loved it.
Oh, that's.
I'm not rich enough to be eccentric.
Neither am I.
I'm just not.
I'm just a poor country lawyer, and I'm just a poor country lawyer. But it was a great show. Folks, go out, look for it on my sites, look for it at Amazon. And God Created Baseball on the 8th day. God Created Baseball by Marc Littell. And in the immortal words of Edward R. Murrow, good night, folks, and good luck.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
You know something, Mark? Try doing 5-star. Press it.